if I was to talk about disruption and the amount of automation that's coming, I mean, there's people out there that want to find a job that's fun and exciting and always different. You want to be in automation. You want to be in the home automation systems. You will have so much fun. You'll make six figures easily, and you'll be traveling all over the world.
Welcome to the Construction Disruption Podcast, where we uncover the future of building and remodeling. I'm Seth Heckerman of Isaiah Industries, manufacturer of specialty metal roofing and other building materials. And joining me today as co-host is Ryan Bell. Our goal here at Construction Disruption is to provide timely and forward-looking information regarding the construction world. As part of that, we look at new innovations as well as trends in practices, building materials, the labor market, and leadership. Today, we are delving into the world of lighting science. Lighting that is healthy and conducive to good living is increasingly becoming an important goal with commercial buildings and also higher-end homes. To that end, our guest today is lighting design futurist John Fox, president of Fox & Fox Design and also Ascenti Lighting. Trained in architectural engineering and electrical engineering, John is a well-recognized expert in the field of lighting design. Developing and fabricating custom light fixtures utilizing the latest LED technologies and controls, Ascenti has worked with such projects as the Freedom Tower in New York City, the Louis Vuitton store in the Las Vegas City Center, and many high-end residences as well as resorts and hospitality projects. Their own trademarked circadian safe technology is designed with both blue and violet emission chips, negating the typical blue spike that can occur with LED lighting, which is known to negatively impact our circadian rhythms. So, John, thank you so much for joining us today on Construction Disruption.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I look forward to learning from you today. So let's jump right in. Why lighting? What attracted you to this field and devoting your career to it?
Yeah, my wife and I are just celebrating 30 years together, and we went to school together at the University of Kansas, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I think our daughter's going to be going there in the fall, so we're very excited to extend that tradition in our family. So she'll be doing some sort of art program and music and jazz. So excited to be seeing more Jayhawks materials and logos walking around our house again. But why lighting? My wife and I, when we graduated 30 years ago, we kind of fell in love with the ability to marry the technology of something, high engineering, as well as the artistic element, how to apply that artistically. And we were taught with some really great instructors over the time where you learn to almost paint with light. And once you realize that you're able to paint with light and to really impact spaces, you can make good architecture look great, and you can make great architecture look amazing. And so lighting has just been something that we fell in love with early on in our education and been doing it ever since.
Very cool. March is a big time of year for a Kansas Jayhawks fan.
Yeah, so. we blew out Texas Southern yesterday, 27-point game at the end. It was like basketball 101 class.
Sure. Well, neat. That's a interesting perspective, marrying that kind of left brain, right brain of art and engineering. Sounds like your daughter may be in that same vein of a jazz musician. That's kind of the whole brain genre of music too. So that's very cool.
Absolutely. No, she's amazing.
What does she play?
She plays the tenor sax, and she's got some great teachers and just having a lot of fun. And we had to post her KU when you go do auditions. We have to post them online, so they're actually on YouTube. So people go see our auditions if they wanted to.
We can look her up later for sure. Well, so back to lighting. Help us understand. You've done a lot of work with this circadian safe technology you've developed and the impact of LEDs on our circadian rhythm. So help us understand the negative influence that these bluish LED lights can have on our circadian cycle and sleep patterns.
Yeah, no problem. It's one of my favorite subjects. I did a lecture tour that took me all the way to Europe to talk about it. I think at the time it was called "Your LEDs Are Poking Me in the Ganglion Cells," which is a part of the eye that is very sensitive to blue light. And, we even learned more. I mean, that was a number of years ago, but we continue to learn more about the technologies that are out there, but also learn more about the eye since then. But I have, one of the things I would point out is that blue light really isn't damaging to us. It's really, the question is, when are you exposing yourself to this blue light? During the daytime, you actually can't get enough blue light, typically in your eyes, unless you spend almost the entire day outside. So, in one of the elements we have being in the fact that most people work indoors and work within, underneath roofs and in spaces, it's really hard to get the amount of blue light that you need. So, one of the things we talk about is just learning and understanding sort of the cycle of that. And so when you say, well, what does that mean for blue light? How do you get that? Well, you actually can't put enough light in a room to get blue light when you need it. So throughout the day cycle, from 10 a.m. to sunset, roughly, you need to have a super exposure to blue light. And they found out that you can really get away with about an hour worth of blue light if you went outside to reset your cycle, reset your circadian rhythm. Your internal circadian rhythm is actually a 23-hour clock, not a 24-hour clock. So it actually runs, but you want to reset it every day. And so that's why when you go to, let's say you travel, you get on an airplane, you travel to Japan, you'll notice that it takes some time to get adjusted to that. That's your circadian rhythm adjusting for the fact that it's even more than the 23-hour clock difference, because your body can adjust throughout the year. When we see when the sun takes, goes down sooner throughout the evenings, it's dark at 5 instead of 10. So your body adjusts to that naturally. So your body is very flexible in those senses, but the problem is long term. So how is your lifestyle affecting you long term? Are you spending enough time outside? And you go, if I go out, I can do that when I'm, next week or next, tomorrow, or, I can get more daylight when I retire, whatever. But the truth is that, it's the exposure of blue light at the right times of day for a lifetime that really will actually determine whether or not you are susceptible to Alzheimer's, brain degradation and memory loss and things like that. So there's a lot of white papers, a lot of research being done to prove that. There's a lot of people that already believe that, like I do. And so I think there's going to be, I think you're going to see a shift in the way people operate once they understand that, hey, being indoors all the time actually isn't good. And it doesn't matter how much blue light you get in during the day. You can't get enough unless you go outside. And so that's an important element. But once the sun goes down, once you are supposed to have no exposure to light, minimal, especially light that's above the horizon, you can actually, in fact, change the way you sleep and how much melatonin is going to be produced, whether or not you actually produce any melatonin to fall asleep. I don't know about you guys, but I work till I pass out. Like, I work all day, I work all night, and then eventually I go to bed. It's actually really bad. What you really need to do is fall asleep naturally. And if you just go and you pass out, what actually happens is you're actually skipping a number of steps in your sleep cycle that you're missing. Because what ends up happening is you're not actually sleeping due to the melatonin making you sleepy. So what happens is when melatonin, you have basically you have two restrictors in your brain that's producing either cortisol or it's producing melatonin. And blue light is the mechanism for that control. So you either have an on or you have an off. So if there's blue light around, you don't need a whole bunch to keep the melatonin squeezed off. So you got that, you're basically squeezing off the hose. You say no melatonin. There's light around. There's blue light. So we'll keep that melatonin, and let's open up that hose for cortisol, keep you awake and keep you active. But eventually, the sun goes down and the body goes, oh, I think the sun's down. I think it's time to open up that melatonin so you can start to get sleepy. And you'll notice that if you sit around, if you go camping, it happens naturally, like because you don't have any cameras around, you don't have lights, and you're out inside of a building. Notice how almost within a couple of, maybe in one night, maybe 2 nights, you fall asleep naturally. Like, oh man, I'm so tired. I'm just going to go to bed now. After you've been sitting around the fireplace, making s'mores and things like that, which we love to do. But you're following that natural rhythm pretty easily. And we just, because we're so technically advanced as a culture and society, we can turn on our own lights and we can keep ourselves awake, and we change our sleep cycles pretty easily. What we want to do in a residential application is make the home as earth-centric as possible. So what does that mean? What does that mean when you say circadian rhythms? What do you mean that when you change the light? Well, that means we have to have control of all the lighting in the home, and it needs to be automated. It needs to be in a way where you go, I hit one button, it says I'm home, and it does whatever is going to be required for the home at that time. So you're going to see things like in the high-end homes that we do this with, maybe after everybody's asleep. One example would be one thing that you don't want to do is flip on the lights in the bathroom, right? You don't want to go in and go flip on the lights because the amount of brightness and the duration of brightness will determine whether or not you're going to open up or start producing cortisol or not. So what you want to do is you don't want to start opening that hose for cortisol. You want to be able to stay sleepy, right? I don't know what you guys do, but I actually let the moonlight into my window open, and I just try to figure out where I'm going. I don't want to flip on any lights, because if I do, you can hurt your eyes. You can start to see you're starting to wake up. You're like, oh, turn that light off, quick, just so you don't interrupt yourself. And so what we want to do is automate that. And so we'll use a special light solutions underneath toe kicks, underneath sinks, anything that's below the horizon, and we'll carve out all light except for maybe a monochromatic scenario, like we'll maybe just go to an amber LED, depending on the sort of the client's wishes. Because if you do amber, you can actually get a monochromatic, so it only produces one wavelength. Very similar to the way that the guys that are in submarines work under red lights. If you see that in the movies, they flip on a red light so their eyes are adjusted, but they can still see. But we don't want to light up everything. We just want to light your walkways. We want enough light so you can see the sink and flip it on. And you can do that with any color, really. You can actually do it with blue if you wanted to, play on the edge. And so as long as it's below the horizon, the photoganglion cells are actually on the bottom side of your eye. And there's only about 10,000 of them that are in your eye. You have, I think, 1 trillion receptors in your eye. So when you only have 10,000 of them, they're kind of looking for this special scenario of sunlight going up. You can actually trick the eye and say, okay, well, there's no light here. And if you notice, when you're sitting around the fireplace or sitting around this campfire, you still get sleepy. And you're like, well, that's light, and it can be pretty bright. But the issue is really it's not very bright, and it actually doesn't have much blue in it. And it's below the horizon. All those things are features, and that allows you to say, look, I can stand in a fire and I don't get tired. That's light. Well, that's true. But there's factors in the reason why it's not keeping you up. And so whether or not it was fate or just happenstance, all LEDs, 90% plus of all LEDs have a spike right at the same photosensitive receptor of that photosensitive ganglion cell we talked about. They both are at the same wavelength, 460 nanometers roughly. And so you can actually use that LED to your benefit when you can, during the day. And then what we do is we use a violet chip. He was mentioning that earlier. We have a violet chip, and we mix those two LEDs. So violet chips are much more expensive because you're basically using a near UV LED and then carving out the light at that color temperature of 460 so that there's less light than a typical LED. So you shift those two things. You actually can keep the color temperature fairly the same, CRI, all those things you can not change. But we change the color on purpose. So it'll be during the daytime, you get higher color. People will call it cooler. People might say it's more daylight. Think 4,000 to 5,000 degrees, 5,000 Kelvin. And then when you dim it down, typically when you had dimmers prior to LEDs, it got warmer. Remember those? There was halogen, LED, even regular bay lamps. As you dim it down, they get warmer. Well, that's 1800K, that's 1400K, 2700K, those cool, warmer colors. So we actually build that into our LEDs. So we have an LED that's 2700 or maybe 2400 all the way up to 5000, and it shifts naturally from one to the other, but it also shifts the technology. So it has a blue spike at the cooler temperature and carves out that blue niche once we go to the warmer temperature. So we're the only people that do that. Most people just go, well, we'll just use blue LEDs for both of them, and it'll be close enough. But my goal is to sort of be on the edge of technology and push it and be as ideal as possible.
Interesting.
Is that enough?
That's fascinating. Yeah.
Lots there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I just carved up an hour lecture into whatever, 15 minutes.
No, definitely fascinating and mind-opening to the whole science that goes behind what you're doing every day and is behind me flipping on a light switch in the middle of the night when I'm up. So that's very helpful. So really, it's not harmful. Saying that it's harmful blue LEDs isn't the right phrase. It's
correct.
Blue LEDs at a harmful time. We need it during the day. We need to kind of be ratcheting back on exposure in the evenings. And so you're working with your clients or, through your technology to manage that. Is that a good summation?
I think that's a great way to think of it. And I also think that there's a contingency of people selling product that would say, look, we can do a blue-rich environment for you during the day. You can do it at work. You can do it in an application where it's bringing, you use high blue in an office application. I think that's fine. But the truth is that you still can't get enough light there. And particularly in California, where we have Title 24, where you're restricted the amount of light, which is actually anti-human to restrict the amount of light that's required for people to operate. It was a requirement based off of the California's desire to produce and build fewer power plants. And so they said, well, let's produce, what can we do? Well, we can reduce the amount of light that people need. And this may be controversial, but I know exactly how the process was done. When the IES, the Illuminating Engineering Society, produced the standards for lighting, they basically did an actual, what we would call social studies. They built rooms, they had people come in, hundreds of people come in of all different ages and diversity, so they can say, okay, based off of our experience with people reading text and to be able to do certain operations, these are the light levels that are required. California cut all of that in half.
Wow.
And they said, yeah, you can still see. Well, yeah, you can still see. It's not the question. The question is what's the right amount of light? And the studies are already done. And so to see California do that, we have a contingency of people that recognize that was all due to being an energy efficiency requirement. It has nothing to do with being human. And now they're coming back and say, well, what could be the right answer? Now that we have much more efficient LEDs, much more ability to control color, and I think there's going to be a shift back to being a human-centric solution. So I really hope that's the case. And I'm going to be an advocate for that. I would love to have this be promoted to the right people, so people can see it and understand that.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Title 24 is the energy code in California that affects pretty much all segments of building products. We deal with it with energy efficiency, solar reflectivity, and other requirements on roofing products, and obviously relates to lighting as well. But definitely something that's going to continue disrupting the industry because most people are pointing to Title 24 as a use case for every other area of the country adopting their own versions of it. So some of the challenges that come when trying to standardize and define what's best and healthy for all of us, taking all factors into consideration. So
yeah, and Title 24 has never been about health. And so it's always been about the environment. And I think that's fine. That's great. We can do those things, but you have to bring the human element into it. And there's certain things that you would do differently if you knew and we paid more attention to. So I appreciate Title 24, but I think the wellness standards, from well building, you can go online and go look up on well building standards. You're going to see a much more human-centric solution to building standards. And I think more and more people are becoming, aware of well building technologies and approaches, so that you don't just try to save the environment, you try to make people healthy.
Sure. Surprise, it's a multivariable conversation. So
if it was easy, everyone would do it.
yeah, exactly. So obviously something you've spent 30 years learning everything you can about and are incredibly passionate about. Tell us how this and expertise and interest is playing out in your companies, Fox and Fox Designs and Ascenti Lighting, and what both of those companies are working on today.
So Fox and Fox Design is a design firm. So we get hired by architects and interior designers and developers to help create a solution for a project. And my interest is really geared towards beauty. I like to be able to solve problems that require an aesthetic and a creative element to it. And not to say that my wife is also in the industry, but she does mostly schools, K through 12, institutional work, and it's beautiful work. But it's a different sort of creative requirement. There's a lot more linear products. You're dealing with a lot more linear codes or lighting requirements for students in classrooms and hallways and corridors and things. Whereas for when I do residential and hospitality, the light levels are much, much less, and you're trying to be as creative as possible with integration, and the costs are different. Your budgets to do these kinds of things are a little higher, and so I maybe it's because of just my exposure, but we've narrowed it down to those kinds of projects over the years, and so Fox and Fox is really geared towards hospitality and design and residential and hospitals and things where technical element of light is sort of critical. And then Ascenti Lighting was born in 2006. It was originally called Raic Products, but we rebranded it more recently, I think in 2018. And it was really based off of I've been doing a lot of custom work ever since I started. My wife and I actually were overseas a number of years, nation building for the Sultan of Brunei. So we were in Asia living, and we probably specified $2 or $3 billion worth of lighting while we were there. We lit everything from roadways to convention centers to homes to conference centers to resorts, anything you could think of that a city or a country would need, we were the sole lighting designers for. And so there was a lot of work going into that and a lot of custom elements that went into those things. And when we came back to the States, we had this vast knowledge that we didn't have before. And what custom work turns out to be something that, because of my industrial design background in school, I studied under Victor Papanek, who is a world-famous industrial designer. And he actually worked directly for Frank Lloyd Wright when he was a kid. He had to lie. This is a great story. He had to lie and say he was 16 when he was 14, because back in Chicago back then, you had to be 16 to work, because of child labor laws. So even though he was only 14, he had to lie and told Frank directly, how old are you? So I'm 16. He goes, all right, you can go. So anyway, Victor became famous in his own right after that. And industrial design has been something that I've always been passionate about. And so that's what custom lighting design is. It's marrying industrial design with your skills in lighting. And so it was a good match for me, because there's nothing I really need to learn about lighting at this point. It's more of how can I apply it and make it interesting and make it beautiful. So it was a really great story in how we started. Ascenti was being asked to help, or Fox and Fox was being asked to help with a Louis Vuitton project in Vegas. And it's a great project, still there today. And it was we were going to do the interior and exterior. We got paid $75,000 to develop a design for the exterior of this building. We did full-on drawings, sets of drawings to go out and get bid for lighting manufacturers. And I had 3 no bids. Nobody wanted to do it. They all said it was impossible. And I said, or maybe one of them said, we could do it, but we're too busy, and it sounded too much work, blah, blah, blah. And I was really frustrated with that because not only did I know it was not impossible, but the director of architecture for Louis Vuitton is a good friend of mine. We actually worked in Brunei together, and I didn't want to let him down. So I basically said, look, I'm going to sign a non-disclosure agreement with one of the manufacturers, and I'm going to help them build it. So I started Raic Products to build Louis Vuitton, and it's really off of the concept of don't tell me it can't be done. That's really what it's been, and that's really how Ascenti's been built ever since. If you say it can't be done, give us a call. That's usually how we get these jobs, and we've done so many crazy kind of work that has nothing to do with just lighting. It has a lighting element always, typically, but things to take photography shots better for selling coins. All kinds of things that are just insane. Robotics incorporated into it. A lot of video. So it's been a technical kind of company, but it just specializes in lighting.
So Ascenti is working on things with manufacturers like what you described earlier of scooping the spectrum here or boosting it here and making those tweaks to fit the exact need you're trying to accomplish on a project. Is that?
Yeah, color could be a big element to it, but there might be because of the way that we build things. There's giant chandeliers that are 8-foot diameter that no one else wants to do, and it's outdoor, and it's hung by four columns in the middle of a walkway, and no one else wanted to touch it. So we said, well, we can do that, and so we built these giant rings. They're actually in Philadelphia, in Conshohocken, Philadelphia area, and then we did a chandelier which is on our website for GSK, Glasgow Smith and Kline. They helped build the COVID testing equipment and things like that. And they're a big pharmaceutical, and they wanted to do a giant double helix through a triple hide space in one of their factories, and it was like 80 feet long. And how do you do that? How do you make that so it looks like it's floating and kind of loose into the space? And so we engineered a solution that even my own team didn't think was possible. They're like, we can't do it that way. Like, yeah, we can. And so it took time to even convince my own engineers that it was possible. They had to do all this testing. We had to do 3 mock-ups, and one of them, the mock-ups, is full scale. It's in our warehouse, lit up. It looks cool. Just out, so we had an extra one, so might as well hang it. But again, what we got from our customer was a sketch. It was literally just a rendering of two things of light going through an elevation. It wasn't even done in 3D. It was just an elevation saying, can you do that? I'm like, yeah, we can do that. A year later, it was like a 9-month process, but I thrive off of that. I mean, if I had to do, and no offense to my own wife, but if I had to do schools all day long, I would have a hard time. I really like challenges that are different, and I'm waiting for someone to call me and go, hey, I want to do a car. All right, let's do it. So, I'll probably have to do it to my Cybertruck. So,
do you have one on order?
Oh yeah, I'm first.
Okay, awesome.
I was at Battery Day listening, and the way that worked is that Battery Day ended, screen went black, and then a sign came up that says, "Order, reserve yours now." And so I just clicked that and filled all the forms. So I'm not first, but I'm pretty damn close. We'll see.
That's awesome.
It'll be fun to have that. We'll plaster it with the Ascenti lighting stuff, and we'll take it to the trade shows, and yeah, it'll be fun.
Well, that "don't tell me it can't be done" attitude is what we need more of to innovate and disrupt. So admire that, and it's inspiring to hear those stories about what you're working on and pushing the envelope. So, this is how you're interacting with industry on these passions and all that you're learning in terms of what we need from healthy lighting. If we were to walk into a home that a high-end residence that you've worked on, how would it look different? Would we tell that the lighting was hued differently? Would we see different features? What would that experience be like for us?
Well, we just submitted for awards, and you'll get to see a lot of it because we just won awards for it. This project that we just finished, and we've got 3 more in behind them ready to go that we'll be able to submit and finish. But the goal for the customer is that they wouldn't have to touch any light sources. Like they wouldn't have to be able to control anything. They just come in, they hit one button that says home, and then the house is automated. So you'll see some switches. They can turn things off if they want. They can override. So you'll see the switches and things like that. But what you'll notice is there'll be a lot of integrated lights. We avoid downlights like it's the plague. I mean, you guys some people call them. They call them. In the East Coast, they don't call them downlights, but like the little ceiling holes, on the ceilings. They call them cans. They call them
can lights. Yeah,
can lights. Yeah. So all those things we try to integrate into the space, and so you're going to see a lot more integrated under counters. You're going to see a lot more in toe kicks. You're going to see them under beds. You're going to see them under cabinets. You're going to see the decorative things. They would actually be controlled too. But one of the things you will really notice is the fact that the light actually would have more than one source in the space. And I used to teach at the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise. We call it FIDM here in California, and it's for interior design. It teaches mostly interior design, Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandise. So and there's an interior design program, and I was teaching lighting there. And I was teaching Lighting 101 to a bunch of interior designers that were just fresh out of high school. So it's like, okay, how do you teach lighting to, non-lighting people? And lighting's not going to be their specialty. And so we came up with a phrase or an acronym called TADA, like TADA. And it's TADA, right? So that stood for 4 different things: task, ambient, decorative, and accent. And my philosophy that we did for these students was, if you can touch 3 out of those 4 and explain them in your presentation to your lighting, when you're trying to make a presentation to me about lighting design, and because you're going to do a project by the end of the year, and you can talk about 3 of those 4 elements at a minimum, you have a potentially good lighting design, right? That's the whole point. So the idea is that you don't just go in a room and put a bunch of downlights in it and call it lighting design. We don't do that. We want to know where the art is. We want to know typically, particularly now, and me being over 50 and having aging eyes and all those things, you need more light. And people don't put enough more light into the space. They just put brighter downlights, which are more glary, which if you start to get cataracts, you can't see them. You have to turn them off and you can't see it. It's just a cycle. So we solve those problems with uplights. We solve it built into wall washers. We build them into some integrated pieces that spread the light source out so that you don't have a brighter source, you have more sources. And then, you work out, sconces that are the right feel for the space, but not too glary. And then you integrate for nighttime, because you definitely don't want to have lights overhead at night. So how do you get the space to be functional, so can you still work and have dinner and have friends over and things like that, where you can still reduce the light level, but not have everything lit up from above. So I think that's you'd have to understand a little bit more about light to know the difference, but you would look at the space and go, wow, this is really well lit or really cool, and everything seems to have to be lit where it's supposed to be, because the art is lit when the art piece is actually lit itself. So it takes some time and it takes some energy to do that properly. But we're doing a house right now where there's no downlights in the entire house. It's 3,000 square foot home with not a single downlight. It's actually my interior designer insisting on it. She's like, I don't want any downlights in here at all. I'm like, come on, we got to have a few, just a few. We need them. Where's the art going to be? She's like, we're not going to do any art. I'm like, no, you're going to do some art. I mean, this is not, we know there's art in this house. but there's not much. And so everything's integrated. It's built into they have backlit stone. They have backlit countertops. They've got, shelves that are going to have all little knickknacks in the shelves. And there's going to be a wall where all the family art is. And they really don't want any downlights in the whole house. And I'm like, yes, it's possible. It's doable. But let me put a couple in, because that really adds to the pop in the space. If you like the right thing, people will see it. And we did my first house, my very first design when we started Fox and Fox, 2002. So we're now talking 20 years ago. It's actually a neighbor of ours, and they pulled out this beautiful green sculpture of a bird that they had, and he goes, "I want to light this up." I'm like, "Perfect. Where do you want it?" And we said, "Well, I want it as soon as you walk in, the entry." And so when you walk into this house, it was, the angle of the light was so perfect that it produced no shadow on the wall, no shadow on the pedestal, and it was just this perfect, beautiful light. And every time you walk in, it just pops. And that was really, that was something that was important 20 years ago. So it's still important today.
A lot more of intention going into it than just putting a giant light fixture in the middle of the ceiling and calling it good.
Oh, not only that, but you not only you put one light in the middle, but you put a fan on it. So it's three things in one.
Right. Yeah. So how does that, this is where you're placing the art, this is where your cabinet's going to be, or dresser, and et cetera. So how does that process work for someone like my wife that likes to rearrange the living room every few months?
Well, furniture, we try not to marry furniture that much. And so furniture can move around. Typically, one of the ways that I solve that problem is every fixture is actually adjustable. And so what you'll see in most cans and most homes, particularly spec homes, is basically a disc. This isn't one, but kind of something like this, where it just produces a lot of light, and it just glows. It doesn't do anything. I got a fixture here. You'll find this in most residential lighting designers. So I'm not the only one. So most lighting designers are aware of these kind of concerns, and they address them pretty much the same way. But here's a fixture that is a puck light. Now, we just developed this. This is the only puck light. Goes into cabinets. You can see it's pretty shallow. You cut a hole, you pop it into the hole, and it holds it in place, right? This goes into under cabinets and things like that. But what's unique about this one is, first of all, it's got a deep recess. So the LED is actually pretty deep in there. So as you rotate away, you actually you lose brightness, right? But here's the other beautiful element. It's adjustable. So we can point it where we want on the shelf or in the space. And we got these all the way up to 5-inch. This is the 3-inch, and there's a 4-inch and a 5-inch. So this is an adjustable fixture for doing these kinds of things. And we put the light where we want it. So the critical element is to recognize that people definitely want to move things around. And how do you build for that in the future?
There's so much of, it sounds like so much that goes into this design is understanding your customer and understanding how they're going to use the space and live into the space. So what in selling, salesperson world, we call that needs analysis and consultative selling. So what are your best practices for having those conversations and really unearthing what the ideal solution is going to be for your clients?
Time. You really need to spend time with the client, and you have to be able to have them be able to communicate some of the things that are may not be something that they're even know how to ask or even know how to. So you kind of have to pull it out, and it's a delicate process. We try not to come in with a solution right away and say, "Here, this is the answer, and this is how we do it." We really want to present sort of, this is how we're approaching it, and these are the ways we want to see these things, and then let them take some ownership of the decisions. But that's sort of the philosophy of. There's a great book that's out that talks about that sales technique, and it's called Getting Naked. And the idea is to be vulnerable as a salesperson is to learn how to be vulnerable. I'll send you the link of the book. It's a great book. My wife's executive training class just took it, and I bought it just so I could have it. And it's really about, if you come in with a solution and you're the expert, right? Because I am an expert, right? But if you come in and say, okay, this is the right answer, this is how we do it, and you don't let them sort of catch up or even have questions or even have any buy-in, what they do, if you fail in any way, it's disparaging on you, right? You're not the expert you thought you were, or you say you were. And the truth is that all that changed was you said this is the right answer. And what you want to be able to do is say, hey, we want to get the right answer for you. Let's see if we can solve this problem. And they may come back and say, hey, we didn't really like this. Well, okay, what can we fix? There's this belief that we can solve those problems together. And that process is huge. So I've been encouraging people to read this book ever since we read it, but it's a phenomenal book. Let me see if I can pull it up while we're talking. But yeah, Getting Naked by Patrick Lissoni. But look it up. It's a great book.
Definitely will. And it's so important. I love that you started off with time. We try to crank through all the tasks that we have on a given day. But, if you do take that time, if you go through that process, you're going to come up with a better solution where everyone's going to be more satisfied at the end of the project, and you get to charge more for your services. Good selling means, some margin. So there's houses being built without thousands of dollars being invested on lighting design. But if you walk through that process with someone and help them understand how you can make their life better, they're going to see value there.
Yeah, I can't stand spec homes anymore. It boils me when I see them, and you've got Home Depot puck lights, which are just the flat. They're called pancake lights, and they're just everywhere, just pancake lights everywhere. And it's just, it may take good photography because it's all lit up and it looks great in a photo, but I can't even be in these rooms. It hurts me.
Well, I gotta tell you, my mind is just turning as you're talking, and I'm going through the upstairs of my house. Like, what can we do? Like, I'm ready to change our lighting.
I'll give you a great example of that. I had a great project, great client, so open to ideas, and we would kick around things together. We're doing the whole house, and we're changing. We're applying a lot of the technology and ideas that we have here. And the wife of this guy insisted that she do the bedroom. Like, she's an interior designer. I want to do it the way I want to do it. And you're not going to use your dumb fixtures. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, all right, hey, I don't have to do any of this. I can walk away today. He's like, no, you get back here. So, I don't want to get in the drama. So anyway, she says, I'm going to do this room. And I'm like, all right, so don't use the technology we're doing. Don't use the fixtures we're specifying. Don't use any of the technology that we have. And we'll let you do the room the way that you like it. After they're done, she came up and admitted that the only room that she doesn't like is the bedroom, the one that she did. And I think it was a testament to the idea that it was a failure on my part because I couldn't convince her of a conversation that the husband was on board, but I couldn't talk to her in a way that made her feel comfortable about what I did. And that's unfortunate. I wish I could have solved that problem differently. They're super happy with me. We're still good friends. But it was interesting to have that experience where I'm like, look, you don't need me. Anybody can do this. That's fine. But to have her own up to it and say, I don't like the way, I like yours better, was interesting. And it was, I felt bad because I didn't know how else to deal with that problem, but that's a little intimate. That's the Getting Naked part on that book.
I know that 3D printing, switching gears a little bit, 3D printing is another interest of yours, and that has been something that we've talked about here on the podcast some in regards to 3D printing of entire homes. So does that overlap with all this that we're talking about?
Absolutely.
Okay, how so?
I am a huge 3D printing fan, and we use 3D printing literally yesterday. We use it almost every day. for prototyping and for parts that need to be done in the field. So we have a SLA printer from Form Labs. It's a production style printer where you can actually produce things that you can use in the real world. And so we produced parts that are clips or mounting or cover plates, things like that are actually painted and used in the final product and shipped to the site. So it's been phenomenal as far as the utility of it is, because the parts that we would need to have built would have needed a sand casting. So you'd either, or a machine, 3D printed, 3D CNC machine parts, and we can produce it without metal. In this case, we don't need it to be metal, so we 3D print it, and it's a finished product when it's done. So we use it all the time. I have a secret plan to produce an entire company that does just 3D printed lighting products. It's not so secret now, I guess, but no one really knows what it means. So, but I think we could change the entire market of one of these industries significantly, that we would just take up most of the market share. So I just need a couple $1 million for that. So
right. No, super cool. How neat a new technology like that, just further equipping and supporting and letting your creativity run wild all the more when you can go out back and make it up yourself rather than going to someone and convincing them to get tooled up for it.
Yeah, we did some initial studies on 3D printed finished products, and we can cut the BOM, which is the bill of materials to build a fixture, by a third. So if it needs 100 parts to build a fixture, we can do it in 30 parts. And that's where you save money and time in assembly. And so we really think that that's our future. And I want to be part of that. And again, you talk about disrupting. That is a major disruptor. I want my factory floor to have 30 3D printers running 24 hours a day, producing product for the world. So that's our goal.
Awesome. Look forward to watching that coming to fruition here moving forward. But you mentioned earlier, I wanted to ask you about, on the residential side, wanting all the lighting to be automated. Something that we're starting to hear more and more about are these smart home systems. Is that getting tied into a greater automation system for the entire home? And what have you seen being on the leading edge of that? And what do you foresee coming on down the pike?
There's so many cool ways to do automation now. And I'm enjoying playing with all these different technologies. So we have an app on the Apple Store called Ascenti BLE, and it basically marries some technology of controls that make it easy for you to use your phone to control some lights. Certainly, I can't do that with just the home quite yet with that app, but you theoretically could do almost an entire home where it's just controlled with your phone. There's a couple of companies that are really sort of leading the edge on that, as far as trying to make it sort of user friendly and DIY, and something that people could do from the home. Oso is I can't remember, I'm not forgetting it right, but he's going to be on my podcast in a week or so, and he's got some brand new product that's wireless and helps with the automation of the circadian rhythm stuff. But right now it's really, it's hard to do, because the biggest problem is that you end up buying products from all these different companies, and each one has its own ideas about what it's going to be for controls. And so to marry all of those technologies, you need a system that takes all those different inputs and then makes it so that it's easy. The UI is easy, like you just push a button, right? So what we found is by moving the whole house to DMX 512, it's a theatrical protocol. There's ArtNet and there's DALI, DALI, all these different technologies that are trying to do the same thing, but they all have their own limitations. And so DMX allows us the flexibility to buy multiple manufacturers, develop it into the custom fixtures. You can have it in your mirror. You can have it associated with the kitchen. You can have it associated with the downlights. And once we did the research and found out, well, DMX is the easiest way to go. There's going to be more and more of that. And wireless is good, but I feel that wireless is going to be, it's going to be a sort of a Diet Coke version of regular Coke. It'll be there. It'll always be there, but it'll always be the diet version. When you want to do full on controls, you don't want to just control the lighting. You want to control the shades. You want to control your cameras for your security system. You want to control the gate, front gate, the back gate. You want to control your garage doors. You want to control your hot tub. You want to control the lights in your pool. You want to control your landscape lights. Yeah, there's a lot going on. And so that's why you see Crestron, you see Lutron, you see Vantage, you want to see Control 4. These are all home automation systems, and you need a specialist for that. And that's why we partner with a company called Acasa Life, and we tackle those kind of jobs together. Because I'm just the lighting guy. He does everything else, right? The integrators, and so those guys are. If you find good integrators, they're worth their weight in gold. I mean, they'll call you. You can call them up and go, "Hey, I've got a problem with my television," and then you go, "I got a problem with my pool." I got a problem with my landscape lights. It's just one guy you can call. And so those guys are worth their weight in gold, and there's just not enough of them in the world. They're all buried. They're all too busy. And so if I was to talk about disruption and the amount of automation that's coming, I would like, I'm going to be encouraging my own kids, if there's people out there that want to find a job that's fun and exciting and always different, you want to be in automation. You want to be in the home automation systems. You want to learn about Crestron. You want to be an expert, get certified. You will have so much fun. You'll make six figures easily, and you'll be traveling all over the world. So how's that for a sales pitch?
That's what I was looking for. So it's going to be big business. So
big.
Yeah, I had enough trouble connecting my one grill to my wireless router. So having another 80 things in the house to take care of that I'm definitely going to be outsourcing that someday.
Yeah.
So interesting.
We just finished a house where all of the downlights, he has downlights and he has everything else, but every single light source in the room, and it's about a 3,000 square foot house, every single source is color changing. Even the downlights. And not only that, but every downlight is individually controlled. So you don't just flip on a light. I mean, you do because we program it that way, but we also can hit St. Patrick's Day and all the lights, half lights turn green, and Christmas, they're red and green, it's unending options once you go to DMX.
So you obviously have your finger on the pulse of cutting edge things. Any other pitches or insights you have for our audience before we wrap up?
Be open to new things and find some people that want to help you achieve the goals that you have. Don't be married to a solution. There's lots of ways to skin a cat, and so you might find out that you want to do it one way, and then you're in the middle of the research, you find another way of solving that problem. So everything's got a budget. There's people that don't have big budgets, and there are people that have huge budgets. And all of these things are possible with different ways. And you just have to, listen to the customer, listen to what they have in mind. But you also have to have the skills. You have to know those options. If you're going to be the expert, you got to be the one that that can throw those 3 or 4 options out there based off a budget. So it's hard. I mean, like I said, if it was easy, I think everyone would do it. And I think simpler the better. And I think bringing these other technologies that make it simplified are going to be huge game changers.
And don't say it can't be done.
Don't say it can't be done. Our other phrase is always be ascending. Ascenti lighting is really about moving upward and moving forward. And if you're not learning every day, you're dying every day. I mean, we talk about this. It's there's only 2 states of being in this universe. You're either growing or you're dying. There is no status quo. There is no solid, just not moving. Even this earth is dying. this, at one point, this was all growing as a planet, or this universe, or this galaxy. So everything is growing or it's dying. So always be ascending is our other motto. So always be ascending.
Thank you so much, John. This has been an incredible conversation. Getting close to the end of our time. How we like to wrap up our episodes is a little bit of a lighthearted note. Lets us get to know you a little bit better. Is our rapid fire question round. So we do not reveal the questions ahead of time. They can range from serious to a little more silly. But you do have a choice. Are you willing to participate in taking on these questions?
Well, if you want to get naked, that's kind of the right answer. So yeah, let's do it.
There we go. Got to be vulnerable and exposed. So Ryan and I will alternate here on these questions. Ryan, why don't you kick us off?
Alrighty. What is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten?
That's easy. We went to an all snake restaurant in Singapore when I first moved to Asia. When we got hired, our boss wanted to surprise us and sort of shock us with sort of the Asian culture, and he took us to an all snake restaurant. So they open up the little thing and they pull out 2 snakes, and they're wrapping around the arm, and he goes, "This one or this one?" I'm like, "I don't know which one, whatever." So then they skin it right in front of you. They chop it up. They go spicy, not spicy. They cut it all up, and they serve it with vegetables, and they fry it right in front of you in a wok, and they serve it to you within 2 minutes after showing you the snake. So that would be my wife would say here grasshoppers, but she had grasshopper.
Goodness, I'm an adventurous eater, but that's a whole nother level. So that is an awesome story.
Does it taste like chicken?
It does taste like chicken.
There we go. So question number 2, what is your favorite book other than getting naked?
If you're talking about something that's sort of you dive into, that you get sort of wrapped into, there's a book called The Tiger, the story of vengeance and survival, written by Valiant. Forget his first name, but that's a great book. And it's about Russian culture back in the day when you ever heard of the term the Russian roulette, where they take the gun and they spin it? They actually did some research, and there was actually another version of Russian roulette, which was they turned off all the lights and they shot at each other. And so they would shoot at each other with a .22, and they would be in a room and they were just bored. So they would turn off the lights, blow out the fireplace, put a bullet in their gun, and they'd fire at each other. I couldn't believe it. I mean, that's historical. So, but this book dives into the culture of the jungle and a real tiger. It's about a real tiger that was a man killer, and how the Russians went after to go stop him from killing more people. So great story.
Interesting.
Do you have any hidden talents?
One of my favorite talents is that I'm a big smoker on meats. So I have a smoker the size of a small VW bus, and I'll smoke 4 racks of ribs, 2 tri-tips, and a brisket for the week, kind of thing. So I love smoking meats. It's just I love the challenge of something that takes 20 hours to do properly.
What is your favorite board game?
There's a board game that my family likes to play. I like card games more, but we have one that we call Shanghai Rummy. It's one that we invented a while ago. Our family, so it's our generations play. 3 or 4 generations now plays Shanghai Rummy, and it's a very unique game. But for board games, not a really big board game. I like chess. Is that a board? I love playing chess.
Yep.
Okay, chess.
There you go. That's a board game.
That would be my board game. There was the one. What's the one with all the hexagons that you play on the ground on the table?
Is that Settlers?
Settlers of Catan.
Settlers of Catan.
That's it.
Yeah.
Our family loves that. But I would say chess. I would play chess before I played Settlers.
If you had a yacht, what would you name it?
Desdemona.
Desdemona?
Mm-hmm. Desdemona. That's from I actually had an airplane at one time, and her name was Desdemona. It is from a song by Jimmy Buffett called Desdemona is Building a Rocket Ship. It's about a woman who is very creative. She's maybe in a situation where she doesn't have a lot of money and she's trying to be creative with her son or her children. And she's using cardboard and things, building a fake make-believe rocket ship so that her son can go out and explore the world. And to me, it was an intimate story and an intimate thing that I really hung on to as a kid, that song. And so I always associate discovery and exploration with that name. And so I've named my Tesla is named Desdemona. So that gives you an idea. So it would have to be Desdemona 2 or something. I don't know. But Desdemona, I just for some reason like that name associated with adventure.
Very cool.
Question number 6. If you had to eat a crayon, what color would you choose?
Do they taste different? They all taste the same?
I think that's up to you.
I'm going to assume they all taste like wax, so it won't matter. And then it would just be a matter of what color you want to see in your mouth. And I think if I'm going to eat a crayon, it might as well be a crazy color. So how about one of the blues? We'll pick anything close to 460 nanometers, and I'll just eat it.
Okay, I'll go home and find the 460 nanometer crayon so I know what color that is.
I'm not even sure that we could find one, but it's possible.
I don't know. They make some pretty big boxes of crayons now.
That's true.
Okay, moving on. Question number 7. What is the best advice you've ever received?
Well, one that comes to mind that's been I've used multiple times for my own employees was when I got my first job. And I was his first employee. So he was an engineer, electrical engineering out of San Diego. His name's Michael Wall. If you hear this, welcome, Michael. But he told me something that I never forgot. And that I was trying to do all of those things. You hire somebody and you don't have any staff to help you. You're doing all of it, right? You're running around, you're buying the stuff, you're on the computer, you're doing all these things. And I got stuck doing a lot of the drafting, a lot of the things that you could hire somebody else to do, right? And we ended up hiring a guy, a junior designer that was going to do the drafting for me. And I didn't like how slow he was, he and I are good friends to this day. But I wasn't really allowing him to do his job. And he said this, he said, be careful what you're good at. And what he meant by that was, if you want to be the draftsman, you can be the draftsman, but then I'm going to have to hire someone else to be in charge of you. So you need to decide what you're going to do. Because you can do all those things. I can be the guy. I can go at the warehouse right now and I can build the fixtures that I design. I can do the welding. I can do the assembly. I can do the cutting. I can do all those things. But is that really good for the company? And is that really good for where I can be an asset to the growth of this company? And is that really where they want me? So the idea is be careful what you're good at. You can choose anywhere along the line, But he said something that stuck with me for a long time since then.
John, thank you for all that you've shared and been willing to delve into today. Very much appreciate it and look forward to having future conversations just to catch up on all the new stuff you'll be working on 6 months from now. So obviously the type of guy you are. But if someone who's listening wanted to get in touch with you, what would be their best way to do so?
Well, you can reach out through foxandfoxdesign.com, which is our design firm. And if you wanted any custom lighting solutions done, you can reach out at ascentilighting.com. So those two company websites are there, and you can see what we do. And there's a reach out email system through there.
So Ascenti is, for those listening, ASCENTI, lighting.com. So thank you so much, John, again. And thank you, listeners, for joining us for another episode of Construction Disruption. This one with John Fox of Fox & Fox Designs and Ascenti Lighting. So please watch for future episodes of our podcast. We have many more great guests on tap that we're looking forward to. And please, if you would, don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or YouTube. Until then, change the world for someone, make them smile, encourage them. Two of the most powerful things we can do in our own way to have a good effect on the world around us. So thank you again. God bless and take care. This is Isaiah Industries signing off until the next episode of Construction Disruption.